4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to another edition of J.E.D.I Lunch Break Live. This is Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Strategies in 15 minutes or less. Let me just tell you, I'm always so excited to be doing these. Let me just thank all of you who are loyal watchers and sharers of this content. It has really been amazing to get so much positive feedback and to hopefully help to enhance some of the things that you are seeing and experiencing in your workplace. We have talked about already so many diverse issues, dealt with everything from just the simple defining of what justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion are. We have talked about what acronyms we should use. We looked at and talked about from a hiring standpoint, choosing the best candidate and recognizing that the best candidate and the diverse candidate can be the same and usually are the same people. Because we're really just looking for top talent. We've talked about the disparities in this very polarizing environment that we work and live, and that even amongst our government between federal and state, we're getting very conflicting advice about what to do in the equity, diversity, and inclusion space. And then we've also dealt with just hiring and recruitment, some key tools that you can use to not only find but retain key staff. That one thing that I get asked a lot is, how do you know when you need a DEI consultant? And I will answer this question of how do you know, in two parts. The first part I want to share is, you need an outside consultant, and in the same way you need a consultant in any area. You need a consultant when your team, your organization lacks the competencies to either assess, develop, or implement diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies that are supporting your mission and goals. And so for me, just like any other workplace strategy, diversity, equity, inclusion must, this is a mandatory statement, must be connected to the mission and goals of your company, your organization, or your institution. They cannot be separate. They must be aligned. Today's topic is really going to be about myth busting. And one of those myths that we have is that when we talk about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, or DEI, or IDEA, or DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, whichever letters work best for you. When we talk about that, so frequently people want to boil that down to only being about a person's race. Well, here's the myth buster. Justice, equity, diversity, inclusion is not only about race. Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion is about a recognition that all people show up in a way that allows them to bring all the ways that they are and that they live and that they exist to the table. But it also is a fundamental acknowledgement that all of the ways in which we can show up in our various identities, that in some of those places and spaces, those identities are marginalized. And that marginalization occurs because of a systemic barrier or norm that we need to address. Today's question. In the last few years, we've done a good job of recruiting and hiring more diverse staff, but we have a hard time retaining them. How can we improve retention? And a secondary question is, how can we improve recruiting?
So I'm going to start with the recruitment part first. And I would say, first, when you think about recruitment, let's start with I'm going to give you three core tips here. Tip number one, leverage your existing staff and their networks. What does that mean? Well, basically, what that means is that you have staff that already work for you. And we do not live in a bubble by ourselves. So it is very likely that they have networks and know people that by yourself as an HR department or as a staff acquisition team, you may not be able to tap. So start by figuring out a concrete program that leverages your staff that you already have. Whether it is utilizing their alumni networks from schools, whether it's utilizing their association networks or maybe even their community or social activities. Heck, let's be honest, even their faith activities. There is no wrong place to offer someone a job, and so really you can go and be anywhere, and you really should think quite broadly and quite expansively about where you recruit. At the same time, one of the reasons I love the leveraging your existing staff is because it also gives you a chance to engage your staff in building the workforce with you. It creates an opportunity that they're not just their day to day, whether it's a 9 to 5 or other business hours, but that their opinion is valued in how you're building your organization, business, or institution, that they are a valued employee and you want to get more people who represent the kinds of spaces and places that they represent. And so it's an excellent opportunity to also create a sense of belonging, to challenge people creatively, and basically just build relationships overall. The second tip on the recruiting side is build relationship with association. Every single industry has minority associations, has affinity associations of all ilks, and even within the larger associations, have groups and clusters of folks who have specific identities. What kind of relationship are you building with them?
Last week, what I really wanted to focus on are people who are in that job search space and giving them some tips, because sometimes from the outside looking in, it's hard to know what to believe. And as we're in the middle of a job search process, let's face it, everybody has on their best foot, right? Everybody from you as an applicant to companies and organizations, they want you to see the best of them. And I'll be honest and say, if they're really smart, they want you to see the aspiration of who they hope to be. And I suspect that as a job seeker, you may be doing the exact same thing. So what does that mean? What it means is, last week I shared with you three quick things that you can look at. So if you missed that, check the videos out. But a quick recap is, number one, whether or not there is a public facing diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And remember, I use J.E.D.I here, which is justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. Other firms may use DEI. You may also see DEIA, DEIB. As long as it is a statement that refers to some level of equity and inclusion, and it is public facing, I suggest that you read it and check and see if it includes specific commitments and strategies that the institution is doing to address equity or acknowledge systemic oppression. Number two, see who manages the DEI work, whether or not they have a separate individual or team of individuals who are doing that work. I would suggest that if it is a large institution in particular, you want to make sure that it is a team. large institutions being anything over 150 or above. But the most important thing is not only whether or not they have a person and or team, but who does that report to, and is it a separate vertical? Specifically, is it a separate vertical from human resources? Because DEI is more than just human resources. It is about workplace culture, and it should be a part of every single part of an organizational process or a company's business. And if it reports to HR, it means that they only see it as relates to talent and not see it as it relates to systems and culture. And then finally, you want to look at how the company is spending its resources. You want to ask about whether or not they have an employee resource group, ongoing training around DEI issues and topics, and whether or not there's an intentional professional development program and mentoring program. I think a lot of people actually have this question and get asked this question, which really has to do with, I am one of the only maybe queer person, only Black person, only Latino, Latina, only whatever it is that you find yourself the only or maybe just a handful of. And you want to figure out how to better improve your space, how to navigate your space, how to ensure that you are contributing to a collective or inclusive environment. Let's just first of all start with the overall message, and that is in creating inclusive environments are a team sport that require a conscientious, or what I like to refer to as an intentional effort from everyone who is in the space. Any and everyone can help be responsible and contribute to creating an inclusive environment. So, what are some of the things that you can do? And let's just go through a few quick suggestions here. First and foremost, recognize and value diversity. It is important just to create an environment where unique perspectives, experiences, and contributions are frankly just acknowledged, and just as importantly as acknowledged, appreciated. Now, acknowledgement and appreciation do not denote agreement. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you create an environment where everybody just agrees with everybody says. No, that would not be productive in anybody's space. But you can acknowledge, you can make sure that you're creating an environment where thoughts are actually listened to and thoughtfully considered and appreciated for them bringing forth an idea. The emphasis here is to create an environment where you value different perspectives in the hopes and with the impact of having better and in better group outcomes. Another thing, set expectations. Listen, if you all, I know many of you who have worked with me and who maybe listen to me on this StreamYard know that I am a big, huge fan of Stephen Covey's speed of trust. And one of the most important behaviors that he talks about in the speed of trust is setting clear expectations. This is establishing ground rules that help people to know what the boundaries are of the environment that they're in. It encourages active listening and being mindful of our language and our biases and avoiding making assumptions. When you understand where you are and what's expected of you, it promotes inclusivity, respect, and a space that creates open dialogue. And in the meantime, for more tidbits and information, be sure to follow us, like us, join us, share with us, do all the things on our social media channels. And don't forget, if you have a question, you can always reach out to me at J.E.D.I at holidayadvisors.com. That's J.E.D.I, J-E-D-I, at holidayadvisors.com. Until then.